This is the fourth video in the series for Microsoft Access 2013. In the previous videos, we talked about tables, forms, reports, and queries. And now in this video, I wanted to introduce you to the basic idea behind the concepts of relationships. So in Access, and one of the reasons why Access became more popular and why people use Access instead of Excel is the relationship feature, because I can relate one field in one table to another field in another table. So when changes are happening, they can be updated, and I can also track things from one place to the other. So for that, I've created a very simple example. What I've done is this is like a DVD rental a database. So I've got a business, I'm renting out DVDs, and I want to track my customers when they are borrowing it, when are they returning it. And I'm going to leave a copy of this on my website, and I'll put a link in the description section so you can download it and follow the example around with me, or you can create your own. So what I've done is I've added some customer names with the customer ID 1234, and what I've done is in this one, the customer ID, the data type is number rather than auto number, because I want to do two different variations of in this example. And then I created a table DVD, which is the list of DVD, in which the DVD ID is auto number. Then I have the name of the DVD. I've got some genre, like I've created a lookup wizard. So in the bottom, the lookup, action, romantic, and you can track all the information you want. And then I went and just added some DVDs, A, B, C, D, and different genre. And then I have a third one, which is a table rental, in which I want to connect this customer to the customer list in here, because I don't want to continue typing things here, and I want to relate it so I can go to that table and I can see which customer has been ordering what. I want to connect this DVD to my DVD table so that I can go to that DVD and I can see if DVD is missing. I'll be able to see who was the last person who rented it, and then the date that person rented it, if they returned it. And for the payment, I've got to drop down whether they paid it or is it due, so I can take it from them when they come back. So something very simple. Now the thing with relationships are that relationships are mostly from a primary key. So I'll open this table DVD. So this is the primary key to a secondary key. So this will be considered a secondary key. And that's the way relationships work. So what I want to do is I want to relate this DVD to this one. It will relate to this, but I will show this particular DVD, and I'll show you that. So I'll close this. Now from this DVD drop down for data type, I'll start the lookup wizard. Now in the previous video, I showed you this option that I will type the values when I wanted to create a drop down button with different cities or whatever. But in this case, I need to choose the first option. So if you read it, it says, I want the lookup field to get the values from another table or query. So I want to get it from another table. So I'll choose that and I'll click next. Now I want to connect it to the table DVD in this case, so I'll choose that and I'll click next. I'll take the DVD ID and I'll also take the DVD so that I get the ID, which is the 123s, and the name of the DVD, and I'll click next. I can choose to sort it by the name of the DVDs if I wanted. Next. Now here's the list of my DVDs, which is coming from that table. And it is hiding the key column, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, which I don't need. Click next. And there is the last step. I can finish it. There's an option called Enable Data Integrity, which I'll talk about in the next 10 minutes. I'll click Finish, and it's asking me to save. Say yes. Now if I come to the front end, I'll click in the DVD, and there is the drop down button with all my DVDs, and I can choose it. Now the same way, I want to come to the customer and I want to relate this customer to that one. Now you see, when this relationship happened, the DVD data type is no longer short text. It's turned to number, because the table DVD I'll come to design view. This DVD ID is a number and it is related to that. I see the DVD name, but the relationship is to the primary key, and that primary key is a number value. So even here, it has to be number. Now I want to show you a relationship process from a different way, and I want to relate this customer to, I'm going to right click on the table customer design view, to this customer ID. So it's going to go from a primary key of this table customer to the secondary key customer in the rental table. Now before I do that process, this is number, so I need to make sure that even this customer is number. Otherwise the relationship will not work from the other process. I'll click save it, I'll close it, I'll go to database tools, I'll open the relationship window, and it shows up. A lot of times the tables may not be there, so you may need to click the show table and then click on them, and then you have to add it. So the table rental, I'll add it. It's already there. I think I'll add the table customer, add it. So there it is. Now all I have to do is drag the customer ID and drop it on the customer. So it shows me that the relationship is going from table customer ID, to table rental customer, and create it. And this relationship is known as one-to-many, because in this table I will only have that customer listed one time, but in this table I will have that customer listed multiple times, because the same customer will rent my DVD multiple times. So I need it to be one-to-many. And I can click create. Now I can always go back, right click on it, and I can right click on it, and I can delete the relationship or edit it. I can even edit this relationship here, and I can do the enforcing referential integrity, which we'll talk about. Okay. Now I'll just delete this, and I'll do it the other way again. So I'll right click and delete it, say yes to saving it, I'll close it, say yes to saving it, and I'll come back to this table rental design view. Now if this was short text, I'll just hit save. Even if it was short text, when I start the lookup wizard, I go through the steps. The first option, next, and then I want to connect it to the table customer. Next, I'll take the customer ID and I'll take the full name, so that I'll see that in my lookup. When you do it the other way, you don't get the lookup. You have to do the whole lookup process manually. So this way I prefer to do that, because it does the relationship also. And I'll click next. I'll say show the full names of the people ascending, sorted. There's the names. Next, finish. Okay, and you see it sets it the data type to number. I'm going to show you in the bottom in the lookup. Now if you had done the relationship through the database relationship option, then you have to come here and set this up, this whole step, so that when I come to the data sheet view, the front end, I will get this drop down button. I will not get this drop down if I don't do it the way I just showed you. So now I'll just enter some names, so I can choose some things. So I'm just going through the list and choosing some people who've borrowed DVDs and returned it. So that's the process. Now I'll just close this and show you. When I go to this table DVD and I click on this plus sign, you see I can see that connection. So this is what is known as relationship. So now I can come here and see that. If I go to the table customer, and I think this person was Alfred. So if I click on Alfred, now I'll be able to see Alfred's whole history of borrowing the DVD. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause this video and I'm going to enter some more rentals. So I've entered some 10 records and I've left some date returned empty, just like as if they haven't returned my DVD. So I can close this and I'll go to the table DVD and I can click on the DVD and I can see who the person is, when they borrowed it, when they returned it. So I can see all of these in action. So there is that hasn't been returned since April. So I can figure this out. I can go to this more button here, which is in the home tab, and I can go to sub data sheet and I can say expand all. So it expands all of them. I can go back to more, sub data sheet, and I can say collapse all, or I can go through it individually. If I double click on this table customer, now I should see when I click on the plus signs for somebody. So I'll go back to this Alfred. So I've got it. He's bought it twice. These are the IDs and the dates and the paid payments. So this is what relationship is, and you can go to the window by looking at database tools, relationships. So if you ever wanted to figure out what's happening in a database, you'll come to the relationship window to get an idea about what that relationship is all about. I'll close this. Now let's understand the relationships a little bit more. So say for example, for some reason I start making some changes. So I changed this customer ID because that's why I left the customer ID data type to number, so I can control it, because with auto number you cannot control it. So if I change this, and this guy is associated with 2 different DVDs, so I'll change this number to say 16 and I'll close this. Now let's look at the rental. The 2 rentals that this person was associated with has disappeared, and now I have to choose them again to associate with them with the 16 number. So I'll close this now and I'll double click on the customer, and there it is, number 16, and there are those DVDs associated with it. Now if I change this number back to 13 and I'll close it, I'll go back to the rental. Now they would have disappeared again because the numbering system's changed. So I can change it back. So now here we're going to understand how to make sure that these type of updates and also the other things are like deletes can happen when you need it to be happen. I'm going to close this. And before we go to that, I'll also do one more thing and talk about the delete part too. So say I add another record here, 100. I'll make up a date of today and I'll just type someone's name. And I'll add this to one of the rentals. So I'll have this number 11. I'll add it to this one. It hasn't updated. I may need to close it and close it again. Sometimes you may need to do that to refresh it. That's why I prefer to keep the tables closed. And there it is, test. Okay, that's number 11. I'll close this. Now I'll go to that customer table and I'll click on this row, number 100 test do, and I'll delete this record. And it's asking me, are you sure? I'll say yes. Now this record got deleted. I'll close this table. Let's look what happened to the table rental. That record is still there. The names have disappeared. So the thing I'm going to show you will try to fix both of these problems. One is with the updating part and the other one is the deleting part. So to do that change, I have to come back to the database tools and relationship window. Before I go to the database tool, I think I need to do something. I'll double click on the table rental and make sure that this is not empty, because that was the test Joe. So because if this is empty, this will cause a problem. So I'll just fill this up with some information, because the relationship will not work if this table is empty. I'll close this. I'll come back to database tools, relationships, and then click on the relationship window, and I'm going to right click on the line between this customer to this customer and go to edit, and I'm going to choose enforce referential integrity, and I'll tell it to update, and I'll also tell it to delete the related records, and I'll click OK. Now you see it says one too many, and then the relationships has been changed to update and delete, and I'll close this. Now let's see what happens. So if I go back to the customer table, double click on it, and I'll change that Alfred from 13 to 16. I'll close this table. Let's see, double click on table rental, and you see those are still there. And when I double click on the customer table and I go to the 16 record, they are still associated with that individual even though I made some changes. Okay. Now the same way, if I wanted to delete a record, so let's see, who do I want to delete? So I'll use the John Doe. So I'll close this. It's always best to do that. And I'll click on this record number 1, John Doe, and I will delete this record. It's saying specify cascading deletes. One record will be deleted from the other side, and I'll say yes. Are you sure you want to delete these records? So customer is gone. Let's look at the rental. And John Doe was number 7 and John Doe's been deleted. So this is where the referential integrity really comes into play, because in some situations you may want this and in some situations you may not want it, because you don't want certain information going away, and you, in some cases, you want things to be updated. So wherever you think it's appropriate, you can do this. So I'm just going to go ahead and close this table again. Now in the previous video we looked at how to create query based on one table. Now I'll show you how you can create queries based on multiple tables. You can take fields from different tables. Once you have the relationships, then you can use it. So let's say if I go to create the query wizard and I'll do a simple query, click OK. And I'll say, let's see, I want to take some information from my table customer. So I'll take the customer ID, the date created, I'll take the full name, and maybe I'll take the telephone number. And from the rental, I want to take the DVD, the date rented, and the date returned. And I'll click next. Now it's asking me some options about how would you want to see your things. I can go to summary, and I can actually go to summary options, and if I had some dollar numbers or something, I can actually sum it or average it, which in this case I don't need to do it. So I'll just leave it as it is. Next. And then if I want, I can modify the query. I'll just call it QRY1 for now, and I'll click finish. So remember this earlier, and I can see both my tables. Now if you run this query, you will just see all the records here with their names and the DVDs that they've borrowed at different times and different days. So say I wanted to figure out who is it hasn't returned my material. So I'll go to the date returned criteria, and I can type the word is null or just type the word null. Null means empty. It puts the word is for you even if you don't type it. So when I run it, it will show me all the people who haven't returned my DVD because the date returned are empty. Now if I want, I can save this query and I'll close this table. I'll right click on this query and rename it to query not returned. So along with the query, we can also create forms, and the forms can be based on one table, which we looked at in the video number 3. But let's look at how I can create a form which will have fields from 2 different tables. So when I go to create, and I can use the form wizards because I get more control over it with that, and I'll choose the table customer. I'll add all the fields by using the double arrow, and I'll choose the table rental, and I'll add all the fields to my selected form. Click next. Now it's asking me, hey, do you want it to show it like that, right? The customer form will be on the top and the rental will be on the bottom. If I choose it by rental, then it will be grouped all together. So this is much better, and the form will be like a sub form rather than a linked form. I think the sub form is much better because I'll be able to see it. I click next. The defaults are fine for now. Next. This is where I can give it a name, so I'll just call it FRM customer and FRM rental subform. It's just much better when you do that, and I'll click finish. Now you see this is my customer form, and right underneath it is my rental. So if I wanted to modify it, I can come to the layout view, and I can just extend this a little so I can see all the fields nicely. And remember yesterday, I did the video yesterday, but in the third video I talked about how you can add buttons, which is much more easier when you do it from the design view. In the design I can add a button for navigation, so I can click here and I can say go to next record, use the arrow or like that kind of an arrow, finish, and I can add another one for go to previous record. I can move it nicely, and if I wanted I can add a button for new records, record operation, add a new record, and I can even choose it as a text word. Okay, so let's see what it looks like. I come to the front end and there it is. So you see now when I go next record I can see Lisa, and there is Lisa who's borrowed this DVD on this date, this returned it, paid. I can click next and I can see Paul. Now any changes I make here, it will be applied to it, and I can keep on adding new customers here, and I can just click here and let's see if I add another DVD for this person for today. So Paul Clint, I've added DVD K. Let's close this. Say yes to saving everything. Let's go to the table rental, and there it is, last one. Paul Clint, DVD. So this is pretty cool. I can close this, and now let's look at how to create reports using the same multiple tables. So first I can use the report create for a query if I want. So I can go to create report wizard. I can add all the fields from it. Now in this case I'm going to get all the queries which are going to show me all the people who haven't returned the DVD. So I say, you know what, I don't need that field. And even if you add it now you can delete it later, so I'll leave it for now so I can show it to you. I can click next. Now because this is information coming from two tables, it's giving me the option, do you want to show it like this or do you want to show it like that, like all in one line? And I'm like, you know what, let's just show it in one line for now. Let's click next. Next, I can choose to sort it by date rented. Click next. I can make it portrait or landscape. If I've got lots of columns I can make it landscape. Click next, and then I'll just give it a name, report not returned list, and I'll click finish. And here it is, and yesterday I showed you how you can go in and make the changes. And I'll close the print preview, and I can make the changes here in the design view. So say I click here on the phone number and also on the bottom holding the shift key because I don't need all the space. I can click here and on the bottom, and I can reduce this a little. And this is the date returned. It's not visible, but that's the last one, I think. Let me move this little inside. And the date returned, this one is the date returned, so I'll expand it just to see it. Now I don't need it, so I'll hold the shift, click on the top, and I can delete it. So now I can click here, click here, click here, click here while holding the shift, and I can move it all together. So now I'm just making room. And you can always go to format and make things centered. So this is the detail line. Detail line means all the individual records, and this here is affecting the header, so the top header. So if I make this red, the date rented will be red in color. And if I click here and I make this color something else, now the details of date only will be in blue in color. So let's see, if I go to the design and I come to the report view, and you see there it is, red. So this is the list of all the people who have not returned my DVDs. So I can call them up and use the names. Here's the date they rented it. I think this is the date they created the record for that customer, and this is the date they rented the DVD. I can come back to the layout view also, and I can just click here, double click on it, and I can just type a new title. Click here, I can expand it to the end, and can go to format, and I can center it. And the same thing, I can start clicking here and I can extend it and move them around even from here, the way I was able to do it in design view. So I can close it, say yes to saving it. Now the good thing about this is, as I keep on adding more records, all I have to do is whenever I'm ready, I just double click on it and it will show me the list. So say for example, I go to this Paul Clint took this date on 6/11, the number. So I'll go to the rental and I'll find that and I'll put in a return date. He returned it today, and I'll close it. Now if I double click on this report, that person's name doesn't show up. The one that he rented today is there because that's a different record, but the previous one is gone. So it will update itself because this table is not storing the information. This table is running the query, and the query is looking in the tables to give me up-to-date information. Okay, so the same way, I'll just quickly create another report just based on the table. So create report wizard. I'll take some fields from customer. So I'll customer ID, date, full name, and I'll take some fields from the table rental. I'll say let's take the DVDs they've rented, the date they've rented, and the date they've returned it. And I'll click next. Now because this has got fields from two tables, even in the report it's giving me the options. I can choose to show it like this, but in this case I'll say, you know what, let the customer names be on the top and then indent it, give me the list of DVDs they've rented. So this way it will look much better. I'll click next. Next, I can sort it by whatever I want, DVDs or whatever. Click next, and I can make it landscape. Click next, and I can just call it report complete list, and I'll click finish. So here's the list, and I just need to modify some things to move this inside. So I can close it, and now the first thing I'll do is I'll click here and shift and click here, and I'm going to reduce this because I don't need all that space. I'll hold the shift key and start highlighting all of these guys, and I'll move them in, and now I can move them individually a little bit away from each other, and I can extend them together. Now let's see what it looks like. Report view. So there it is, looks much better. So here I can see, so it only gives me the people, customer names who rented the DVD. The people who haven't rented the DVD, their names don't come up here. So you see Alfred, it's got 3 different ones. Louis, single. And you can always come back to the layout view and you'll find that there are options for page setup from which you can set it back to portrait. They have options for formatting where you can change some outline colors and shape fill. There's also options to do conditional formatting. Well, if you've seen it in Excel where I can set certain conditions that if you see these numbers or these words, make it certain color, and you can make those changes. Format options are also there. So I'll close this and I'll say yes to it. Now the good thing is these are just sitting here. Whenever you want it, you just double click on it and it will open up your whole report. So that's for the returned list, and this is for the complete list of my customers who've been renting my DVD. So I hope you got a really good foundation, at least not a complete but a decent understanding of database tool and relationships, and also understanding when I right click and go to edit relationship, and how enforce referential integrity comes into play, and how the updates and the delete options work. So you can download the sample file and just practice with it, think about it, understand it. You have a question, go to the help section and type referential integrity, and you can start reading more about it and see what they are. And in the next coming up videos, I'll try to do another example which will have much more tables, so you'll be able to understand it much better with more queries and reports, and how to create invoices and things. Thank you for watching.